In recent years, we have seen a significant change in protest tactics, with protesters exploiting gaps in the law, which have led to disproportionate amounts of disruption.
This bill just places a gagging order on protesters.
We're in a democratic crisis here. This isn't happening unintentionally.
Travellers have a long history of living with the land. We have a long history of contributing to this country, and it's been written out.
Then if this law comes in, people can be imprisoned, they can have their homes confiscated for being who they are.
We will make it a criminal offence to live in a vehicle on land without permission, and we'll give the police the power to seize vehicles if necessary.
Well, if they're seizing people's homes, what happens to those children? Are they going in care? They're not going with gypsy families, so what is that then? Is that forced assimilation?
We need the right to access nature so that we can have the right to protect it, because the people that own it aren't doing their job.
The Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Bill is an Act of Parliament, currently in the House of Lords after being passed by MPs. At over 300 pages, it is a substantial document and offers a comprehensive review of policing powers across the board, including sentencing guidelines, violent crime, sexual offences, road traffic and public order. On the whole, the bill has received little public attention, but there are certain clauses that have been labelled draconian by human rights groups, citing them as an erosion of civil liberties.
The right to protest peacefully is a cornerstone of our democracy and one that this government will always defend. But there is, of course, a balance to be struck between the rights of the protester and the rights of individuals to go about their daily lives. So this bill will give the police the powers to take a more proactive approach in tackling dangerous and disruptive protests. We are changing it to allow the police to put conditions on noisy protests that cause disruption, significant disruption, to those in the vicinity. And as with all our proposals, the police response will still need to be proportionate. The statutory offence of public nuisance replaces the existing common law offence.
We have protest law now, which deals with violence, it deals with insulting words and behaviour that causes harassment, alarm and distress. It's quite a low bar in the Public Order Act. And it separates clearly violent disorder and abusive disorder and peaceful protest, and they should be separated. Peaceful protest is a completely different thing. We're entitled to do it. It's the backbone of British society that really should be enshrined.
What do we want? Justice! What do we want now? What do we want? Justice!
It doesn't matter how big or how small your protest is. These new measures such as noise and inconvenience, serious annoyance, any protest can fall under that. These are really serious measures that the government is introducing and things that we've never had on the statute book before. It's striking at the heart of protest and the heart of democracy.
In March, just before the bill was debated by MPs, women gathered on Clapham Common to pay their respects to murder victim Sarah Everard and protest against violence against women. The response by the Metropolitan Police was to break up the gathering using force.
I back the police when it comes to fighting crime, and I think this report was important. It has basically said that the police acted in the right way when it came to events on Clapham Common.
An initial report by the Police Inspectorate cleared the Met of any wrongdoing, but a subsequent report by a cross-party parliamentary inquiry found that the police response was unjustified and that the Met had breached the fundamental rights of those attending the vigil.
This legislation will empower police to be making the types of decisions that they were making at the Sarah Everard vigil. And what is really worrying about this is that whilst, we might have some sort of justice after the fact, now we're realising and now people are saying, okay, this was policed badly and poorly, but the damage is already done. When we look at the impact of this legislation on people's ability to feel like they can go on a protest and the kind of chilling effect of these measures, whilst, the people that are willing to get arrested or are willing to risk those things are always going to go out and protest, and they're always going to be active and make their voices heard. People who already experience that fear or, fear from the police because they're disproportionately targeted already or have never been to a protest before and now hear that they could get 10 years in prison for causing serious annoyance, they're not going to want to come out and protest.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
While the new laws are sweeping and apply to any demonstration for any cause, it appears that ministers had a particular campaign group in mind when drafting this legislation.
A lot of people know about the climate emergency that didn't before. It is getting into people's perception now. Part of that is due to Extinction Rebellion, not all of it obviously, but part of it is because people sat in the road. And we're talking about teachers, scientists, grandparents, sitting in the road, getting arrested. They've never been arrested before. That has had an effect and the government don't like it.
Non-violent civil disobedience works. It's what the suffragettes used and it's what civil rights people have used, and we're going to do it.
I think often the priority is to appear as though you're in control. So they don't like Extinction Rebellion because when we sit in the road and if they use a lock-on, it means that the police are not in control of that road and they cannot remove it immediately. Really, that shouldn't be the important thing. The important thing should be who is safe. What are they actually doing?
In recent years, we have seen a significant change in protest tactics, with protesters exploiting gaps in the law, which have led to disproportionate amounts of disruption. Last year, we saw XR blocking the passage of an ambulance on emergency calls.
The video that has been shown many times was of an ambulance going around Millbank roundabout when Lambeth Bridge was closed for 6 hours because the police chose to arrest everybody, even though the blockage by the cyclists was for 10 minutes while they had a dance, which was kind of agreed with the police, but then MO6 command team got involved and decided to block it for 6 hours so they could arrest I think there were 200 and something people there, and seize all their bikes.
This bill is but one example of this government's turn towards authoritarianism, and one of the mere ways that it is stifling dissent and clamping down on the ways in which we can hold it to account. There are numerous examples we can turn to here, such as weakening the Human Rights Act. It's treating journalists like spies through amendments to the Official Secrets Act, disenfranchising millions of potential voters through the Electoral Integrity Bill. These are different tools and different measures really affecting the ways in which we in a democracy can hold the government to account and stand up for what we believe in.
If we don't get no justice, then we don't get no peace. If we don't get no justice, then we don't get no peace.
We approached the Home Office for comment, and while it was not possible to arrange an interview, they did send us this statement on behalf of Policing Minister Kit Morehouse.
This bill will help to keep the public safe. The bill will update our outdated public order laws so that police can better balance the rights of protesters with the rights of others to go about their business. The right to protest is a cornerstone of our way of life. The Police, Crime, Sentencing and Courts Bill in no way changes the fundamental place that protest has in our democracy. But we cannot allow highly disruptive demonstrations which often trample over the rights of others to go unchallenged. Tens of millions of pounds of taxpayer funds have been spent taking police away from fighting crime to deal with the disruption caused. The new measures in the bill will enable the police to better manage such protests so that they can alleviate mass disruption and protect the rights of those who are impacted. The police will still have to make proportionate decisions about when to take action, based on the evidence in front of them, with the ultimate aim always being to protect the public.
In addition to the potential curtailment of the rights of protesters, there are also concerns about the impact this bill will have on the gypsy, Roma and traveller communities.
No one should have to put up with disturbances and disruptions on their doorsteps. Unauthorised encampments can create significant challenges for local authorities and cause distress and misery to those who live nearby. As we pledged in our manifesto, we will make it a criminal offence to live in a vehicle on land without permission, and will give the police the power to seize vehicles if necessary.
What consideration has she given to the rights of generations of people who often have been around longer than some of our property laws, of travellers and gypsies in this country who might want to pull up on a roadside for a night? What consideration for their rights has this bill that will automatically criminalise them been given?
My culture dates over 1,000 years to northern India, and our ancestors travelled by foot with horses and wagons and tents and came to the British Isles. We arrived here about 500 years ago.
"66% of British adults don't realise that Irish travellers and Romani people are ethnic groups. When you don't even realise the absolute basic facts about communities, how can you know enough to form a real opinion about it? That's what's frightening to me. I think that's frightening to a lot of people. We never get to see the positive side and all the things that we do contribute to society. And a lot of people, I've never met a Romani person or an Irish traveller person in their life. And I think if that changed, if people could see the contributions to arts, to sport, to music, people would have a very different opinion of these communities, but they just never get the opportunity to see it.
We know from the Women Equalities Report in 2019 that the government admitted they've inherently failed us for decades, and that's by not providing adequate site provision or the right support for education or health. And then there's this. Now they're going to take away travelling. And this won't just affect the 15% of us that are still travelling on the road. This will affect all of us. As people know you're a traveller, you're treated different. And that mentality is set by bills like this.
It seeks to entirely eradicate nomadic gypsy and traveller life and cleanse it from the British landscape by bringing in £2,500 fines, the confiscation of caravans and imprisonment for people who live the way that our ancestors have lived. And some of those people don't have any choice but to live that way.
There's only 50 pitches for 1,700 people. 20 of them pitches have been described as abhorrent conditions. So when you criminalise them people for having nowhere else to go, it's not because they're doing it to be belligerent or to try and put anyone's day out, it's because they got nowhere else to go. So you're criminalising the people for something that is no fault of their own.
Gypsies and travellers have to sometimes stop and land where they don't have permission. Now that might be public land, that might be a bit of forestry commission land, it might be a common, it might be a byway. The kinds of bits of land which were usually uncontested are the traditional stopping places for our people. I think the Conservative Party is doing this because racism towards the gypsy and traveller community is still seen as being acceptable. It is a ramping up of persecution of a community that is already very persecuted and marginalised. The gypsy community has the worst health outcomes, the worst education outcomes, the lowest life expectancy out of any community in this country. If you were to place that anywhere else in the world, it would be in the fourth world, in very underdeveloped countries.
Again, we put these concerns to the Home Office, who sent us this statement on behalf of the Policing Minister.
The bill will also address the problems caused by unauthorised encampments. These encampments often bring excessive noise and littering to local communities and leave people unable to access their land. The bill will make it illegal to reside in a vehicle on someone else's land without permission, where the people residing are causing significant harm and refuse to leave when asked to do so. This is not about criminalising a way of life. The vast majority of travellers are law-abiding, and we respect their rights to follow a nomadic way of life. Rather, these measures are about giving the police the powers they need to address significant disruption and prevent misery to local communities.
Finally, there are worries about the ways in which this bill criminalises trespass by hikers and ramblers, eroding the rights of the British people to access our countryside.
I can assure the House that the new offence has been framed in such a way to ensure that the rights of ramblers and others to enjoy the countryside are not impacted.
Class, money, power and land ownership. Who gets to decide what's in the national interest? This is more than just a fence around the countryside. By fencing off the commons, they're fencing off our minds, and we're on.
The way that trespass is defined in law is as a harm or a damage to the personhood of the landowner. So just simply by stepping over the wire onto land that I don't own constitutes damage. In law it's called a legal fiction, and the whole premise of trespass resides upon this legal fiction that by being on land that you don't own, you are causing damage to it. It affects every single person who feels that they want to go into nature, who all of a sudden has this extra burden of dealing with, well, to what extent will I be criminalised for doing it?
1% of the population own half of all England. 8% of England. That's the sum total of the right to roam that we have.
Britain has a long and proud history of protest, and many of our most cherished freedoms have been won through that means.
My gut instinct is that they will start putting in conditions more and more readily. And I think it will radicalise people, because if they feel they don't have a right to expression, then it will push them beyond the limits of non-violence, possibly. That is the risk.
If it gets passed, we will become outlaws. And there's a very old saying that when freedom is outlawed, only outlaws will be free. And if we have to be outlaws, we will be outlaws.